Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this free clip of aggressive progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. Check out this next clip, and if you like what you see, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.
Hey everybody, welcome to Aggressive Progressives. I'm Jimmy Dore. We're back from Italy. We're going to talk about it. I'm here with Steve O. Hi Steve, how are you?
What's up guys?
Also here
He's the raging agent.
Raging agent. And also the miserable liberal is here, Steph Zamorano. Hi,
I am
Steph.
miserable.
Yes, yes. And of course, we always like to start off the show with my computer. We always like to start it off like this.
You know, guys like Jimmy Dore, for example.
Yes.
You know, Jimmy Dore talks about a lot of things that you'll never hear if you flick on the TV, on the cable news channels, and has very interesting conversations. And again, bringing facts and different things to life that people don't otherwise feel like they have access to.
Start every show like that for the rest of my life. So there you go. I mean, wouldn't you?
It turns out
I would.
It turns out he
I would
doesn't.
play it on a loop. That would just be my whole show.
That should be my pinned tweet.
He doesn't just start his shows with that. He starts his days with that.
I believe it. He's sitting in the toilet just watching this on a loop.
It's got it playing. It's all hooked up, speakers all through my house. So we were in Italy, and we'd never taken a real vacation. Even we took one real vacation before we went to Mexico City, and we were sick the whole time. We both got altitude sickness, because Mexico City is 7,000 feet in the air. I didn't really know that. So we took a real vacation. We went to Italy. I was under the weather most of the time, but I still managed to have the best time. Now, here's the first thing you notice a lot about your own country when you go to another country.
Absolutely.
Right? You don't really know your hometown till you leave it, right? So we left, we went to Italy, and here we are. If you go to my computer, here we are looking over Rome, and that's a beautiful shot of the city. Now, what you notice there is there's no Trump Tower. Right? There's no, where's the Sears Tower? Where's the thing? Where's the Liberty? There's none of that. All these buildings are hundreds of years old, if not older. And you don't miss the modern buildings. I didn't miss them whatsoever. There's no skyscrapers in Rome. And that's a beautiful thing, right? I didn't think about it till I got there. And then I get there, I'm like, oh, there's no, and so now you understand why those people have a sense of history. Unlike we do in the United States, and they understand the tyranny of oligarchs and how often they've had to fight against it. And by the way, Italy's a younger country than I even thought. It didn't get reunified until like 150 years ago. So they've always been the Turks and the Greeks and the Italians, and the Moors. So anyway, it was very interesting also how they organized their society. Right, in our United States, there is no organization to our society. People aren't organized, which is exactly how the oligarchs want it. Oligarchs are organized worldwide. You know who isn't? The people, the workers. So in Italy, their neighborhoods are all centered around plazas, which is a square. It's like a town square. They often have a fountain in the middle with steps. People sit there and talk to each other and congregate. And they'll have you go out on a Saturday night, you see the young kids smoking cigarettes, kicking soccer balls, the old guys playing checkers, families walking and strolling, interacting with each other in the town square, having a cappuccino at the cafe that's on the town square. And why is that important? Well, because they get to commiserate with each other. They actually talk to each other. We don't even sit on our porches in America anymore to even see our neighbors. They all talk to each other all the time. And what do you get out of that? Healthcare. That's what you get. You get universal healthcare. You get to exchange ideas with each other. Guess what? We're being screwed over. So they don't have anything like that in America. The kids are at home playing video games, right? And then if they're not, they're out driving around their cars drinking till they're 21 because they have nowhere to go or do. So that was a big deal. It was kind of a revelation for me about being in Italy. Now, Steve, you've been to Italy. Did you have any of those revelations?
Well, yes. I don't know that hanging out together results in healthcare, but I hear what you're saying. There's definitely more of a communal feeling in many other parts of the world. In the U.S., and I'm speaking on a macro level, gross generalities, of course. There's much more of an emphasis on individualism. there's this myth around the rugged individualism of American society.
Do it on my own.
Do it on your own. You go out west.
Yeah.
You pave your own way. Bootstraps.
Right.
All that stuff. And this is a country where supposedly if you work really, really hard and believe in yourself, then nothing can hold you back. Except that's just not true.
That's not
at
true.
all. So, out of the thousands, out of the masses, some do make it. And then we use those as examples. See, he did it. Why can't the rest of you?
Right.
Except the system is created in such a way that only one or two can make it.
Right.
That's the whole point. That is the winner-take-all system. And in other countries, it's more of a communal situation where you win together, you lose together, you're in it together. Now, there's some good and bad to both. Obviously, I think overall the more communal approach is better. But some would argue that the individual, me, myself, and I'm gonna take it all kind of attitude spurs more innovation. It gets the greed in individuals to go out there and do everything they can so they can win it all.
So
right?
to deny people health care.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the big innovation.
Yeah.
Where's our innovation on healthcare? We've got nowhere. We're
No.
backwards.
The innovation is only on
Making
capitalism,
profit.
making profit, and amassing massive wealth.
Wealth, right.
If that's what you're into, America is the best place, right? So all the big companies in the last 20, 30 years, they've all grown out of the U.S. from Amazon, Google, and everything else. This Tesla, all of SpaceX, all of it seems to grow out of the U.S. I'm sure there's other companies growing out of Europe and Asia that we're not as familiar with, which would,
Well, there's Alibaba,
undercut. Yeah.
which is the Amazon of
China.
of
Yeah.
Asia, right?
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I mean, just one small example. My parents ran a 7-Eleven store when I was growing up. And, back then we had the slurping machines behind the counter and to order at the counter what you wanted. And in Korean culture, if I'm taking my children, I don't ask them what they want. I just get them whichever flavor I feel like ordering, and they eat it, and they like it. If they don't like it, that's a sad day for them. We move on with our lives. But in America, the emphasis on the individual. So these parents and grandparents ask like little 2, 3, 4-year-olds, honey, what flavor do you want?
Oh my God.
And then the kids stare and they're like, I don't know, the red one.
I've experienced
a
that.
blue one, and Koreans have this we don't have the patience. Like, come on, chop, order and get out of here, right? It used to drive my parents crazy. They're like, why do Americans ask their little kids if they want the Coca-Cola Slurpee, the cherry Slurpee, or the pina colada? What does the kid know? The kid's happy with any one of them. Just buy it and go, right? Which I thought was kind of an interesting observation because, yeah, it's true. In America, there is a real strong emphasis on individual rights, and it's not always bad. It's also good, but there can be some negative consequences, especially when it comes to capitalism and economics.
Well, I was just thinking about the whole idea of how the piazzas where like bring people together, and like what we have the Grove. Like the Grove was built and we're like, oh my God, we can go strolling around and not buy stuff, right? Like, so we got that pretend capitalistic, experience. We have it at the Americana, which is like, oh my God, look how pretty it is. Oh, that's fake grass. So like we have these things that are fabricated to give us that impression of community.
Of a real community.
I think you're absolutely right, Steph. I mean, for those who don't know, the Grove is this very high-end outdoors mall here in LA, but all over the United States we have malls, shopping centers. That is a place where people congregate, and you walk around, and there's a little fountain inside the mall somewhere. There's food place. I mean, that is our version of the piazza of Italy. And again, being American, it's all about capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? Go to the mall, buy. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah, great point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also wanted to show you, I don't know how they do it over there, but the food is much, much, much better. Like I kept eating, so here's something that I would eat almost every day, the caprese salad, right? So it's just a little basil, tomatoes, and mozzarella. Now, in America, I'd have to put some balsamic on it, some olive oil, some salt, and some pepper. I got to get some flavor on there somehow. You don't need to put anything on there. I would just eat that like it is, and it was the most flavorful thing. I was convinced that they were putting sugar in the tomatoes. I'm like, so you guys are injecting sugar in the tomatoes as you grow them? How are you doing? It's amazing the flavor that would just explode in my mouth when I would put, and then that mozzarella too was unlike any mozzarella I've had here. And I've had fresh made. And so one time when I were in Positano, we ordered a beer. We ordered 2 beers. We're sitting in this hotel lobby right on the ocean. And this is what they brought us. Here's 2 beers. Then they bring us this bowl of olives. Look at that beautiful bowl of olives. And those were fantastic. And then there was some shelled nuts, a bowl of shelled nuts, and then a bowl of unshelled pistachios right there in the middle. That was for your beer. The beers were $5 each, and the guy who brought it to us got health care. They know how to live in Italy. They know how to eat. And here's something we had for breakfast when we were in Rome every day. Every day we'd go right down the street to this place where a lot of Romans were eating, Italians, and we'd get, I forget what they called that sandwich, the para or whatever, the Parsi. But anyway, it's
nori. I thought it was.
it's just a
Nomi.
Yeah, it's just a caprese salad sandwich on bread. But that bread is so crunchy on the outside and on the it just melts in your mouth. So it's not chewy at all, but it gives you exactly what you want. And you know why? Because there's only 3 ingredients in their bread in Italy. And in the United States, the ingredients is long as your arm list of ingredients. Just that simple sandwich. I don't know what they're doing. And everywhere I would go, they would say it's because we haven't let Monsanto take over our production of our food, right? So we've screwed over our land in the United States by putting chemicals in it for decades and generations. Over there, they haven't done that, that's why they say everything there tastes better. So here, for instance, the last night there, we wandered into a place called Obico, which was on the Piazza Navano, I think was where it was. And we just sat down for dinner. And it was a mozzarella restaurant. They make their own mozzarella, and they make their pizza. Here, let me show you this pizza. So that pizza was called Naples-style pizza, and what they do is they let the dough rise for 48 hours, and that makes the crust extra airy and crispy at the same time. So it's like no crust you've ever had anywhere. Why would you make a pizza any other way? That was after a full meal, by the way. I had lasagna, Steph had some chicken. I ordered one of those pizzas. It was unbelievable. Could not stop eating it. It was the best. And they're making gelato. And again, it was amazing gelato. We had some afterwards. It was fantastic. Here's a woman making pasta. So that was at Pasta Fortunata. And it was the Fortunato family. And her mother used to make the pasta, and her grandmother, now she makes it. And her sons also work in the restaurant as waiters. And there she is making hand-rolled fresh pasta right there. And then you order it and eat it right at your table. And it is amazing.
Wait, that's better than getting
Olive Garden
pasta made at some factory miles and miles away that's then frozen or dried out and shipped and sits there forever, and then they use the cheapest ingredients possible and crank it out at $2.99 per plate and feed the masses.
It's not. It's surprising.
It's better than that?
It's better.
Yeah.
Isn't that surprising? And so here's a young man, Antonis. He's a fan of the show, and he's a photographer there, and he gives like these photographer tours. He teaches people how to take better pictures while they're in Rome, if you're a photographer. And so he sat down and he told us, he said, when I was telling him about why does everything taste better, and he was telling me that it's because we only use 3 ingredients. Like if you want to make bread, it's 3 ingredients. When I was in the United States, I bought bread. There was a list of ingredients as long as my arm. Like, what is all this stuff in your bread? And why does it have to last for 3 weeks? If I want bread, I buy it, I eat it. If I need some more tomorrow, I buy it again, because they walk out their house and there's the stores right there, and you don't have to get in your car and drive to Walmart 10 miles away and say, it's not how it works there. So he said, if I want to eat fruit, I don't buy a bag of oranges, I buy an orange or 2 and I eat them. And when I want another one tomorrow, I buy another one. And so they don't have this shelf life issue, and they don't have all these chemicals, and Monsanto hasn't infected their ground, and so everything tastes better. They live life at a different pace, and
So I want to speak about that for a second. I used to travel quite a bit to Italy because in my prior job before I joined the Young Turks, of all things, I was in the handbag industry. And I had a designer who lived in Italy. He lived in Modena. So I used to go there all the time. Modena is where they do the balsamic vinegar.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, Modena. Or that's how I pronounce it, but it's pronounced that way.
I don't know how they pronounce it.
Yeah.
And then right nearby is also the Ferrari factory. I think you can only go there if you actually own a Ferrari. It's a very exclusive
I think it's pronounced
club.
Ferrari.
Okay.
But yeah, so my designer, he's actually an American, but he lived in Italy for like 30, 40 years. So he's essentially Italian. And he said the same thing. He said in Italy, Costco failed. Costco failed everywhere because, I mean, I like Costco here in the US, but it's just not a Costco culture there. Like you said, you don't go buy a huge bulk of items. And he thinks it is absolutely insane that Americans go to places like Costco and Walmart and they buy frozen foods that were made somewhere else, God knows when.
Right.
And then they buy a whole bunch of it and they stick into their freezer at home or the second freezer in the garage.
Right.
Leave it there for another few more months and then eat it. Right? And like that's crazy talk, right?
It is.
So he had his office where he had a bunch of people designing handbags all day, but around 2:30 or 3 o'clock, they're done. And then he would just walk home. And as he walks home, he would walk through the market. The market is gorgeous.
Yes.
Just gorgeous. Like every single piece of fruit, vegetable, the fish, the meat, all of it looks just perfect. They're not plucked too soon because they have to sit in a truck for a week as they ship all over. They're plucked when they're ripe, and they're only good for like a day or two.
Yeah.
At maximum peak freshness and ripeness and tastefulness, right? That's how they eat. So in the U.S., it's really hard to go shopping every single day after work to make dinner that night.
Right.
That's almost impossible. So we live a much faster paced life. We just race home. We maybe get we get Chinese takeout. We stop at McDonald's. We do all these things. There, he has a home cooked meal every single day. And one of the great things that I learned on one of my trips is his I don't know if it's a husband or a boyfriend, made this incredible dinner. It was just branzino, Mediterranean sea bass. And he just put some olive oil and some salt on it. And then he sliced all these potatoes, had a layer of potatoes, drizzled olive oil and salt, put the branzino on top of it, and just threw it in the oven and cooked it for 20 minutes. And it came out perfect. Potatoes are delicious, the fish is delicious. Only ingredients were salt, olive oil,
and fish.
And the fish and the potatoes. That's it. Excellent meal. So I make it all the time these days. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, I just want to highlight that, people said, oh, now that you're traveling, did you notice anything, right? And okay, so what I happened to come across an article that France had decided, and they made it illegal to waste food, which is amazing because they talk about how the grocery stores would put a lock on their bins of old food. And so people who were struggling and starving had no access. And so they're reevaluating it. And now France is really committed to not wasting food.
Yeah.
And even here, like you talked about that second refrigerator in your garage, trouble, right? They say a lot of reasons that we are wasting food is because of the size of our refrigerators.
Yeah, they say that if you have a bigger fridge, you're gonna waste food.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to actually switch.
But just one thing, I mean, it's not like it's all perfect over there either.
No.
It is.
Yeah.
It is all perfect in Italy.
No, there's lots of corruption in their government, and you have to pay to get stuff done.
High unemployment.
Yes, they have bad unemployment now, but that has more to do with the Eurozone and that they're on the Euro, just like what they did to Greece, and they're imposing austerity now, and they're blaming it on refugees. So, we got to talk to people about that. So our policies of bombing around the world, which is nonstop, creates refugees by the millions. Like all those people that we created refugees in Iraq, they have to go somewhere. So then they go to like Germany or Italy, and then when they have an economic downturn, they start to blame the people with no money and power, the poor immigrants, the refugees, they blame them too. So just like we do in the United States, they're blaming Mexicans. Again, if your job got given to an immigrant didn't take your job. A capitalist gave your job to someone who he could pay less. That's what happened to your job. And so that's the same thing that's happening over in Italy right now. They have so many refugees coming there because of our bombing that they can now threaten their own workforce. Hey, if you don't take it, we'll pay you this, and if you don't take it, get out, because I got a refugee coming to take your job. That's what capitalism does, right? So they have the worst forms of it over there right now. Same thing over here. By the way, it's worldwide. So did you know they had an Occupy in France? They had Occupy in Greece, in Italy. The cops cracked their heads, just like they cracked their heads in the United States. So as Chris Hedges tells us, the oligarchs are organized. They actually do talk to each other. They actually are organized economically across the whole world. The banking system, they're all organized. Do you know who's not? The workers. And so they're getting squeezed out by Airbnbs are squeezing people out of the city centers in Italy just like they are here. That's why when you go to San Francisco, nobody can afford to live there because all the rental properties are turned into Airbnbs. And so now there's less rental properties, and when supply and demand, the price goes up. Same thing happening over there. Workers have to keep moving out of the city centers, which is the same thing that's happening here in the United States. Like, a teacher can't live in Manhattan. A teacher can't live in San Francisco. They have to ship those people in. They're janitors, they're bus drivers, right? They're maids, they're cooks, they're chefs, they're teachers. They all have to be imported because nobody can afford to live there. And that's the effect of unbridled capitalism without regulation. And Marx predicted what's happening right now. So capitalism is eating itself. So now you have cities turning their infrastructure over to private companies for a profit. But what happens when those cities don't have anything left to sell off anymore, like their sewage system or their water? What happens? They're done. And then also capitalism completely collapses. So capitalism is now eating itself like Marx predicted. And it's not only happening in the United States, it's happening worldwide. We have special guest on the line. He's running for Congress in Florida's 23rd district against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Now, if you remember who Debbie Wasserman Schultz is, she's the person who cheated the progressive wing of the party, lied about it repeatedly, and said she was neutral. And she was not, right? So we got outed that she was a liar and a cheater, and her punishment was absolutely nothing. Because we don't punish oligarchs in America anymore if you stick up for the establishment, right? But if you go against the establishment, you will be jailed, right? And so right now we have the guy on who's running against that kind of corruption as an independent, and he's going to explain to us why he's running as an independent. It's Tim Canova, Fighting Progressive Tim Canova. Hi, Tim. How are you, buddy?
Hi there, Jimmy. Doing very well. I'll tell you, being on the campaign trail, you get kind of hungry. I was working up an appetite watching those photos of all that great food.
Yeah. Now, Tim, tell us, now you ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz before. It was very close, even though you had everybody coming against you. And you actually did very well to the point where it seemed like there was some election fraud happening. So you asked to have the ballots recounted. And tell me what happened after that.
Yeah, we put in public records requests to inspect these ballots, and and it should be an open and shut case under Florida law. And yet the supervisor of elections of Broward County jerked us around for over half a year. I filed a lawsuit finally. While the lawsuit was pending, the supervisor destroyed all of the ballots. And those are violations of federal and state criminal statutes. She admitted to it in videotaped sworn depositions. And the Florida Circuit Court granted a summary judgment, which really just opens us up to receive some attorney's fees. We're calling for a criminal investigation, and it's been, the sound of crickets. Nothing's been happening.
So you got a judge to agree with you that what they did by destroying the ballots was against precedent, against protocol, and it was in fact illegal. They're supposed to keep those ballots, and you had already filed a lawsuit, and they destroyed them anyway, which is totally illegal in 10 different ways. The judge agreed with you, so you expected after that the head of the elections in Florida, which is a Republican, would probably do something about it, but they haven't done anything about it. And my theory is, well, what's your theory? Why do you think they haven't done anything about it?
Well, we've looked into it enough, and some Republicans got back to us and told us that these Republicans in Tallahassee and even in Broward County, they have the same friends that Debbie Wasserman Schultz does. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, it comes out to the same corporate interests are backing Wasserman Schultz and the Democrats that are backing the Republicans, and they would really like this to just go away. They don't want a scandal. They'd rather have Wasserman Schultz stay in office than a progressive like me. And they just don't want too much scrutiny of how the ballots are actually counted here.
So what you're saying, Tim, is that even though you have you've been correct, you've been cheated, it's been proven that you were cheated in a court of law, judge agreed with you that them destroying ballots was wrong and illegal, but the people who run the elections in Florida, even though they're Republicans, and you think they would be against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they're not doing anything to the people doing this stuff because they have the same donors. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she works for the same people that her Republican opponent is, and they want to screw you, the progressives. So that old saying of they'd rather lose to a Republican than let a progressive win is because they have the same donors, and this is playing out in real time in your campaign. It couldn't be more obvious, correct?
It couldn't be more obvious. And, this has been a pattern with Wasserman Schultz throughout her career. She headed the DNC when the Democrats lost almost 1,000 legislative seats around the country. She headed something called the Red to Blue Committee to try to shift red seats to blue. And during that time, she actually supported 2 local Republican members of Congress, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and Mario Diaz-Balart, who actually thanked her in his victory speech when he won. So she has a history of actually working against progressives and Democrats even, and favoring Republicans when it suits her own needs. You can always count on Debbie to put her own self-interest ahead of the party, ahead of the country, and ahead of her constituents.
So we've seen that play out right now. There was the red tide. So you're battling the red tide in Florida. Now, the red tide is a naturally occurring phenomenon in the oceans where it produces a certain type of algae that sucks oxygen out of the water and kills a lot of the plant life plus fish. But it goes away. Once it hits shore, it doesn't last long, and it normally goes away, except it's not going away. And it's predicted to stick around for another 18 months in Florida, and it's killing fish by the thousands, even manatees and things of that nature. And what the corporate media won't tell you is that this is happening because of agriculture, right? Because of all the chemicals that big sugar and our animal agriculture are putting into the soil that is then running off into the oceans. That's what they won't tell you. And now Debbie Wasserman Schultz is complicit in this too, because she serves those people who are doing the poisoning of the environment, correct?
Yes, Jimmy, your description was really fantastic. You have all of this agricultural runoff coming down the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico that's feeding this red algae, this red tide. At the same time, you have similar dynamic happening within the state of Florida in Lake Okeechobee. Wasserman Schultz always boasts that she's on the House Appropriations Committee and she's bringing home the bacon for Florida. She's been worthless on that committee. She's been voting for billions of dollars in subsidies for these big agribusinesses, the factory farms, and the big sugar farms, without lifting a finger to really solve these problems at all. And I know the Democrats blame the Republicans, and there's reason to blame the Republicans. Governor Rick Scott has cut funding to test for these algae blooms. But the Democrats and the Republicans are both very complicit in this. They've been voting for gigantic subsidies for these industries that are just destroying our water supply, killing sea life by the thousands, like you were saying, and putting the public health and safety at risk.
Hey, Tim, it's Steph Samarano. Listen,
Hey, Steph.
I'm a big fan. Full disclosure, I have donated to your campaign. But for people who have not met you, what do you stand for? What can I count on you to bring to Florida on behalf of the people?
Thanks for asking that. First of all, the way we raise money is so different from the way Wasserman Schultz does and most members of Congress. This is my second campaign. I have never picked up the phone and done the call time and been dialing for dollars. It's all small donors online at timcanova.com. And we've kept the campaign together and we stay true to our pledge. I think, and I say this having campaigned here this is the third year now, and talking to thousands of constituents, this feels like year 10 of a Great Depression for most Americans. I know the official unemployment rate is low, but we know that's because it doesn't count discouraged workers. It doesn't count people who are trying to make ends meet by working several part-time jobs. We need a federal jobs guarantee. We need a universal basic income. That's a new deal that I'm talking about. And we talk about a Green New Deal, a Solar New Deal. A New Deal is, what it means is making sure the public sector is well funded so that the government can carry out its responsibilities to provide for the general welfare. We need public jobs programs. I'd like to see a voluntary national service program based on the New Deal with a civilian conservation corps, a works projects administration. So many people have forgotten this part of our history. It's like it's been airbrushed away. We need it now more than ever. And I'll tell you, as a law professor, I was writing about not just the need for this kind of a New Deal, but how to finance this kind of a New Deal. I was writing about it for many years. And I was saying we were way overdue for it even before the 2008 financial collapse. Now we're in year 10 since the financial collapse, and it's been a trickle-down recovery. most Americans have not seen any real improvement in their living standards or their job situation. Young folks, 18 to 34-year-olds, more likely to be living at home with their parents than to be on their own, starting families, living on their own. Older folks, take baby boomers. So many of them lost their life savings in the financial collapse 10 years ago. Folks turn 50 and suddenly they're not employable anymore at a stage in their lives when they should be respected, when they should be considered mentors for younger people. They're basically being told, we don't need you anymore. So it's no surprise to me that there's a real depression going on here. You see it with the suicide rate. You see it with the opioid overdose rate. There's so much that needs to be done. We need to get away from the money in politics, privatizing everything. I know, Jimmy, you just mentioned it a little bit earlier. We've been privatizing our water systems, our transit systems. We've even been privatizing how we count the votes with these private software companies that we give them the responsibility and we somehow trust them to do it. We've been privatizing how we censor speech, right? The social media companies can now decide that without any kind of judicial review. The privatization has gone way too far. The schools are being privatized, the prisons. And this is the big difference between Wasserman Schultz and myself and a lot of corporate Democrats and a progressive like me. I want to see the public sector well-funded. There's no reason, there should be no financial constraints on fiscal policy. Modern money theory teaches us that. I know you just had Stephanie Kelton on recently. I applaud her work. On the other side, you've got this craze to privatize everything. Wasserman Schultz actually was for a private immigration detention center in our own district while taking money from the Correction Corporations of America. Now it's called Core Civic. So, she's very shameless. She'll take money from any private interest and she'll support any kind of privatization scheme.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, Debbie has a history of being in bed with payday lenders, which are the scum of the scum of the earth.
Right.
And she has no problem being their champion.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoy this free clip of Aggressive Progressives on the Young Turks. This is just a preview of what you will receive with TYT membership. That means exclusive interviews, panel discussions, and more of Jimmy, and of course, me. If you like what you saw, you can access full episodes of Aggressive Progressives by becoming a member. Head to tyt.com/join now.